Meekers, and I will be reading 2 poems for you today and a short story. The Yams. We are fatigued, brown in this room where you pack us together. We can feel the nails you've pressed into the clay we lay against. Rolls of our scalp reach like dead fingers for your toes you steal. Bodies of our brothers. Look, there goes another. Be careful, in bowls our family lies, skinned, then mashed, and set aside. In Sierra Leone, my mother chewed glossy-skinned dates in the purple plaid folds of her school skirt. My brother watched waist beads ripple as his hands lingered lightly on dancing thighs. Baby, I like you for your big waist, oh, the crowd sang. My cousin never glances up to the charred beams in the roof. His ashen peach burn tightens with every movement of his arm. I may never go to Sierra Leone, where neighbors still chide my mother to toss diamonds back into the thick mud beneath the shells she left as a girl. Don't play with double rocks. My last piece is a short story called Termites. June has passed with its petite pitchers of cream and glassy bowls of strawberries. June has parted with no sign, no word from my grandmother, and I am increasingly worried that the neighborhood boys have smashed the termitarium, smashed that palace like a piñata under the gaze of the golden sun. I remember the first time she rained in our house. I am certain that it happened during those drowsy evenings in May, when Mother would appear in the doorway with those bundles from work or the fish market that seemed to burden her figure more and more each day, like an overgrown toddler still clinging to her skirts. I was 8 at the time, and those curious parcels did try to elude me every now and then, under the coarse cloak of twine and butcher paper. But before dinner, I would quietly ascend the stairs to the door of my parents' bedroom, through whose golden keyhole I would spy my mother undressing a tender package or two. How delicious it was, watching her unfurl an unfinished scarf so red and fruitful, I could smell the brambles where it was born like a harvest of raspberries. Yes, I still remember the curses she uttered blowing through the keyhole, when a bag of minnows would tumble onto a client's dress, as if they were still swimming in an attempt to catch the thin netting of their own lives. Then the door would open, and kneeling at its threshold petrified, I would be shooed downstairs to set the table, but never with the delicate glasses and silverware that dazzled our guests so vigorously. Though I wasn't aware of it at the time, my daily chore was a woman's job, one which my father found quite deplorable. He favored my love of trains and was disappointed that they didn't occupy more of the evening hours. Still, I'm sure my grandmother came during dinner time, when I watched the feverish steam of couscous meander out of my younger brother's mouth like a forgotten trail through the eucalyptus trees outside. Jacob, don't chew with your mouth open, I imagined my mother chiding him, when a knock danced upon our front door. Then father would raise himself from his place across from me to answer it. Soon after, my mother followed him to peer to the hallway, where the dominant form of my grandmother took hold of the door frame and silently shook it until the bones of our house quivered and my father invited her inside. Augusta, I wasn't aware you were in town, he said, lifting her suitcase and eyeing my mother, who touched my arm and said, "Set a place for Grandma." Without a sound, I obeyed. My grandmother was a dark woman, who often fixed her hair in a way that drew attention to her round face and stern mouth. She was wearing a linen dress, which I noticed fell just above her ankles as she sat down calmly at the head of the table. "Would you like something to drink, Mom?" my mother wondered. "Water will be fine. Thank you." "Henry, would you bring Grandma some water, please?" my mother asked me. As I passed by her chair, My grandmother gripped my shoulder and said, "No ice, child, but perhaps a slice of lemon would temper my stomach." I retreated to the kitchen, where the scent of lemon seeped into my palms and the thin slices fell without protest onto the kitchen counter. When I returned, my grandmother was smoothing a napkin onto her lap as my family ate more quietly than usual. I set the glass next to her and sat in front of the meal, which lingered inconveniently on my plate. My grandmother patted her mouth with the napkin and observed my brother play with his chicken out of the corner of her eye. I could not eat. My grandmother's presence demanded my attention, like the roar of a teacher silencing her students. She was the first to finish, and when the rest of my family had licked their plates clean, retiring to the den, she still sat there at the head of the table. My stomach rippled like the seasick rolls of the wind in a sail. I asked to be excused. "That snapping, rumbling feeling in your gut is called hunger. Eat," she replied, and shoved me back to the table, where I swallowed each monstrous bite. Only after my plate was spotless did she release me. During the following weeks, our house was silent under my grandmother's watchful presence, and after 9, only moonlight illuminated our rooms. Those nights were like an ancient tablet engraved with moonlight. I can still feel the soft tapping of its chisel rippling throughout my bedroom to the walls, like the breeze that stirred the skirts of my curtains, who nervously stepped back from the window, as if it were my father looking at their ankles, not me. Those nights, Jacob and I would leave the stronghold of pillows and quilts that encompassed our beds to explore the groaning house. One night, like a grinning raccoon, I snatched up an earring glinting on the mahogany floor. Knelt beside my grandmother's open door, I heard her rhythmic breathing miss a beat as I raised myself from the ground. My grandmother stirred, placing her hand upon her ear as a faint chittering snuck in through the window. The house swelled for a moment, causing Jacob to look at me anxiously. I pushed him towards the window, where we watched a purple cloud squirm under Celine's white eye. "Henry, Jacob, go to bed," my grandmother said, sharply from behind us. Then a swarm of termites floated in as if blown from a dandelion, wings caressing our cheeks like butterfly kisses. Jacob was the first to tear off a termite that attempted to tunnel his ear. Wings fluttered along our calves, and not before long, I was batting termites off of my limbs. Jacob began to cry as my mother rushed in to help Grandma close the window. The shutters latched, snapped shut, and the two women scattered, closing the other open windows around the house. I fled with my brother to the safety under our covers, where the chittering of the termites stroked our arms until we fell asleep. In the morning, I awoke to a quiet house. Peeling myself from the bed sheets, I walked to the window. Termite wings were scattered across the cool floor, and whenever I lifted my feet, they were covered with wings, a sticky film that laminated the soles of my feet. I opened the shutters, and through the maze of eucalyptus trees, I spotted the mound, the palace from where the cloud of insects was born. My grandmother walked in softly saying, "It seems they're gone." I put my ear to the wall and heard no carving of foreign messages on the inside of our house. But as I was about to reply, a tiny brown spot appeared near my face, gasping for air. My grandmother became rabid as I backed away from the wall. She began to claw the walls, ripping them open to see the squirming belly of the house where our new inhabitants dwelled. During the hours she hacked at the walls, the rolls in her stomach multiplied and hardened until her abdomen was covered in stiff brown rings. Her shoulder blades grew more pronounced, became transparent, and elongated into termite wings. The termites continued tunneling. Looking down at herself, my grandmother started to tear at her face, molting on the floor like a larva in a buffalo carcass. After she was done, she snapped at my leg and crawled onto the windowsill as I backed further away. Her antennae fumbled around the shutters like a blind man and his cane before she dived into the evening air to find the palace blushing under the warmth of the orange sun. Yes, I'm sure that's how it came about. I will go out to the termitarium tomorrow afternoon to examine the damage, and I hope they will not just be crumbling lumps of dirt that once held the impression of many grandmothers. I hope that its chandeliers will still catch the light like they did after my grandmother left, and that it will still sit beside the eucalyptus trees like a mountain of gold ripening under a hot glance of sunlight. Thank you.